I want to read you something. It's from Mike Tomlin.
Coach.
Head coach of the Steelers. He said today that the Pittsburgh Steelers are preparing to face Nick Bosa in the game this weekend.
Okay.
And added the quote about TJ Watt 2 years ago when Watt was also holding out, wanted a new deal, got a new deal. Quote, he got a deal done in the 11th hour, and he was in the stadium for the opener. And yes, he was TJ Watt that day. So you ask me, what's the deadline for Nick to play Sunday? I would guess Saturday.
Okay. I mean, and that's...
I don't think, again, that's not ideal. That's not great. That's not anything. But I think that's the deadline.
In terms of...
He has to be there. That's my deadline. My deadline is he has to be there before the game starts.
He has to be signed and actually in the stadium the uniform.
He's already signed.
Right.
He's under contract right now.
Right.
But he has to agree to show up and play football. And if he does that, then he can play.
2 years ago, it was Pittsburgh at Buffalo, if that's to be expected in terms of the exact timeline. 2 sacks, 3 solo tackles, 5 QB hits for TJ Watt.
TJ Watt that year, it was more of a hold-in. He was in team facilities.
Yes.
He was at practices, just not working with the team. He was off on the side, so maybe a little bit different.
Fair point. Absolutely fair point.
22 and a half sacks that year.
DPOY, right?
Yeah, inactive
won
for
the
2
defensive player
games.
of the year.
But, good little year for TJ Watt.
Yeah. Look, it stinks. It stinks, but we're talking about a lot of money. We're talking about a major deal. And I'll add this. Every time you hear someone say, and Rap Sheet's been basically the one singing this song, don't you mess with the Bosas now. The Bosas know their value, and the Bosas have resolve. Well, I think the Niners do too. Now, you may not want to hear that, and I don't want to hear that. I don't want the Niners to have resolve in this situation. I want Nick Bosa to be on the field on Sunday. But if you want to go through the history of contracts and the way that certain teams run them, set them up, what's their reputation, the Niners are not a team that has a reputation for caving. The Niners are not the Jags. Oh, Christian, you want $18 million? It's $18 million.
Christian Kirk.
Okay, Christian, sure. You want $18 million? You give $18 million so that you can come here from the Cardinals because we're Jacksonville and I know you don't really want to be here. So we'll give you $18 million. The Niners aren't doing that. So bake that into it. I don't want the two sides to be playing hardball with each other,
right.
but they are two sides who are comfortable doing so.
I'm looking at this story from ESPN from 2 years ago, and it says, he signed a 4-year extension, TJ Watt, $112 million, 35 signing, 80 guaranteed over the next 3. The next paragraph, Watt overruled his agents who believed they could get more money, and on Thursday, he marched into the office of Art Rooney II and told him they had a deal, and then he excused himself and announced he had to go work out, according to Adam Schefter. This was Thursday before a Sunday, so here we are on Tuesday before a Sunday. So if we get to Thursday, maybe Nick Bosa can do what TJ Watt did and sign and play, and, the Niners would be thrilled if TJ Watt, or if Nick Bosa did what TJ Watt did, 2.5 or 2 sacks in a win at Buffalo.
Doubtful that Nick is going to do that, and they are different situations for a number of reasons, as one of them Grandy just pointed out. But also, like, the Watt family does not have the same reputation with regard to who their dad is and everything. But you're talking about a football family, obviously a football fan. All 3 brothers, high-level players. And had been in the business a long time. I understand how the game is played and how it works, and so that's still, as I sit here today, what I feel. Whenever I look at a negotiation that gets into a rough spot, that's when I look at the motivating factors. I think that Chris Jones is willing to miss games. And the reason I feel like Chris Jones is willing to miss games is because Chris Jones looks at the Chiefs and he goes, I don't think that you guys think I'm as good as I think I am. I don't think you think I'm as important to this team as I think I am. Do you remember the quote I just read to you from Travis Kelce?
Right.
Did you hear what Andy Reid said about the situation last Friday? Quote, Chris has chosen to go this route. Some other guys have chosen to get their deals done and come in and play. I'm not here to criticize one way or the other. We've had a lot of success with the guys that we have, and we go with it. Now, that's the Chiefs' sound. The Chiefs' sound toward Chris Jones is, you're really good, but you are not a necessity. I am not going to set you apart from the other players on this team. They've chosen to be here. You've chosen to not be here. You don't hear that from the Niners.
Right.
The Niners are not saying, Nick, you're not as good as you think you are. The Niners are like, no, Nick, you're amazeballs. We need you. And so I just don't see them. What's the motivation for either side to not be ready for a game? I fail to see what's in this for either side.
Well, for the Niners, it's to not give in to a contract that they're going to regret. And for Nick Bosa, it's to not sign a contract that isn't where you want it to be because you're a Bosa. And we know that the Bosas like to play hardball and they have their value and they want to get their value. So beyond that, there is no motivation. Nick loves to play football and the Niners love to have Nick play football for them. So yes, to that extent, there is no motivation outside of what I outlined. I'm doing a little bit more research on the Chris Jones thing.
Yeah.
And they're $9.5 million
they're way apart.
Yep. And it's a 2-year deal. So they're about $4.75 million per year apart. And Chris Jones is also signed for this year.
Right.
And I'm not sure if Kansas City has enacted any fines or any punishments. All that stuff can be forgiven for a player, who's been on the team for that long. And the Niners they've not gone that route. It's been very congenial on both sides.
But I just, again, what I don't get, and let's say they're $3 million apart. Let's say they're $3 million apart. Okay, well, you just lost $1 million by not playing this weekend.
Right.
So now we're what, $4 million apart? Like, how much do you want to lose in an effort to get a little bit more that's basically going to be offset by what you lose? I wonder this sometimes. Like if you're looking for rental properties, right? I'm not a homeowner. I rent. And so if you're looking for rental properties and you see one that's sitting there for 2 months, you're like, do you realize that if you had just lowered your price about $300, like let's say you're talking about a $4,000 a month rental.
Right.
Well, you just lost $4,000 because it didn't get rented this month. Run that out over the whole year. You're better off knocking that thing down $500 or whatever and getting a renter in now as opposed to losing 2 months, which covers the entire year of what you didn't want to offer that. Same thing here. Like, I want $4 million more and you're willing to give up $8 million in order to get it? I don't understand. There's no motivation on either side to miss games.
Right.
So why would they? Only if you are, in my opinion, overly stubborn to the point of potential stupidity.
Right.
And I mean this on both sides, for you to not get yourself to Pittsburgh on Sunday.
And I wonder what missing a game would mean if Nick Bosa gets to Saturday and he doesn't have a contract. Well, he's under contract. He could show up and say, guys, I'm ready to play. And, if they chose to not play him, he doesn't miss a check. If they decide to deactivate him, he is actually there and he gets paid. It would be up to them to, not pay him. But I don't think it's going to get to that. But there are ways that he could show up and not play and still get paid.